there's someone who Reverend Jackson met on the Jericho Road many, many years ago, and he has proved to be just all that you want a person to be if they are given a chance, if someone infuses them with a high dose of hope and love. Reverend Jackson met this man when he was but a boy in jail. He was so inspired by Reverend Jackson that he said, you know what, Reverend, I want to be like you. I want to work with you. And Reverend said, first, son, you've got to get out of here. But as you get out of here, and I'm going to help you do that, I'm going to work with you. And guess what? Reverend Jackson's done that with a lot of people. And we don't see them again, but that's okay. You just do God's work. But this man almost went past his television show because he wanted to work at Push, and he has never, ever left. He's with us. He's the co-chair of the Push Excel board, someone you see every day on the TV, Judge Greg Mathis. So my brother's going to deny me my hug. What? Reverend Jackson? Reverend Jackson, would you like to begin?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Say, I am.
I am.
Somebody.
Somebody.
I am.
I am.
Somebody.
Somebody.
I am. Somebody.
Somebody.
My mind is a pearl.
Is a pearl.
I can learn anything.
I can learn anything
in the world.
In the world.
Keep hope.
Keep hope
alive.
alive.
This is a back-to-school season for us. We meant today to talk a lot about that. But the Bahamas crisis came upon us. We must serve when the time is right to do what is right. So we're going to organize children from the Bahamas and get them in schools. Hampton University made a bold step. Any student from the Bahamas who's in college, they open up space at Hampton. Give Hampton University a big. Yeah. Also, we want President Trump to waive the visas process. Any Bahamian wants to leave the island while it is down, come to America to live with some family members until Bahamas is restored. So we want America to make room for all the Bahamian people. Make room for our children. The difference between the Bahamas and South Carolina is a boat stop with the same people, a boat stop apart. Put your hands together for the Bahamas. I want to, last week we covered services. Jonathan, you went to El Paso, Texas, you and Will Hall. What did you see down there, Jonathan?
Well, I'd like to say thank you to Reverend Patterson and Reverend Will Hall for their outstanding leadership. El Paso is on the United States side of the border. Juarez, Mexico is on the other side of the border. There's a channel, a canal that separates the two. So to see an American flag partially on a placard, a Mexican flag on the other part, you realize God did not make borders. That it's the same body of people. It's the same people that connect. Before there was the United States, there was a group of indigenous people in Mexico. And thus we get the name New Mexico because it was land that was taken and annexed. So however you try to fight God's divine providence in connecting his people, it will not work. What we saw there were people that had come out of the triangle of Central America and Honduras and Nicaragua and El Salvador, the particular hot spots. This is the area that we remember when we look back on history, that President Reagan was shipping guns for arms. The United States was actively involved in overturning governments, and they have fueled the fire. Well, guess what? When you set someone else's house on fire, what do? You go look for refuge in another place. Those persons whose countries were destroyed by United States intervention are now seeking those gang-infested, drug-run countries to come to America. The same thing is happening in Europe with colonialization. After they've stolen all the money out of Africa, where do the African people want to go? To where their money was taken to. The same thing is happening now, is that the crisis also shows the underbelly and the ugly side of the United States and our lack of compassion, particularly for people of color. The second part, it also shows the racism and discrimination within the Mexican government. The Mexican government can help those black and brown people from their southern part of the borders. So just because they all speak Spanish doesn't mean they're all living in God's will. Even people that speak Spanish will turn on other persons that speak Spanish.
Give it up for Jonathan. Last week, we sent a truckload of products to Juarez, Mexico, and to El Paso. Reverend Patterson and Reverend Will Hall led delegates. Reverend Patterson, what did you see in El Paso last week?
What I was most impressed by was the determination of the people that are on the ground and have been on the ground for the last 30 years. I think because of Reagan's racism in a popular kind of way and him magnifying the issue of the border in his current stance as president, we seem to think that this is a new issue. It's not a new issue. It's an issue that has been problematic since previous presidents were doing what they were doing. And so what we learned first and foremost is that Bush had a hand in this. Hate to say it, but Obama had a hand in this. And presidents before him had a hand in this. And so there are folks that have been on the ground working on this issue for the last 30, 40 years. What I'm grateful for is the humanitarian acts of Operation Push and Hope Institute and other folks that are really trying to make sure that the border problem doesn't remain a border problem, and that the legislation that needs to happen to transform and transition folks from asylum-seeking opportunities happens in a way that brings dignity and respect to people all across that country.
I want to express thanks to Reverend Patterson and Reverend Will Hall and Jonathan. We're going to El Paso and to Juarez as we continue to free people on the border. Reverend Todd Yeary, our vice president, who was also will be to become the Washington bureau chief in D.C. Reverend Patterson and Reverend Yeary. Last week, Walmart made a bold move to stop access to guns. Talk about that a minute.
Last week, Walmart made the decision that they would no longer sell ammunition for handguns and long guns in any of its stores, and they would disallow open carry in its stores, even though state law might make it permissible. What it said was that Walmart, as a profit-driven company, had decided to realign where it would draw its profits from. And so it's an indication that with mass shootings, with gun violence, there is a profiteering that's attached to it that never gets discussed, because we spend a lot of time in shock over the carnage, but somebody's making money in the presence of stepping over and walking past dead bodies. And so we've got to talk about which companies, as a matter of fact, we need to look at which companies are in the profit-making business tied to gun manufacture and ammunition manufacturing, the deployment of weapons of war in civilized zones. What you really have created is what Walmart has taken is a shifting of the conversation, not just around who carries what guns and who has access to which guns, but how we connect the issue of mass shootings to profiteering in the United States that benefits many of the folks who are supporting the current government policies.
What's different about Texas, you have the right to carry a weapon open in the streets. When they pulled a guy over in the car last week, the rifle in the back seat was legal. He went down the street and killed 7 people. We are against open carry. Matter of fact, Walmart took a position, and then Kroger and Walgreens. We want the NFL and the NBA and the MLB take a public position against state government saying we do not want guns in the vicinity of our ballparks. Because with these weapons, they can walk up to a given ball game, just open up fire. They can't be stopped. Some years ago, Judge Miller, we talked about it. They had a guy in the tower at University of Texas shooting people on the campus. So we want universities to take a position against open carry. We want churches, I talked with Reverend Freddie Haynes and other ministers, say churches should take a position. They do not want guns in their churches or in their parking lots. Universities take a position. No guns in their classrooms, on their campuses. We need this fight, massive nonviolence. We saw what happened, Greg, in Hong Kong when people resisted a violation with massive action, massive change. So we're really going to mobilize with your help and others, Greg, to stop the easy access to guns in Texas.
Excellent, because what we're seeing is carnage throughout our country, whether it's in the communities that are of the dominant complexion, if you will, or whether we see it in the inner cities where the guns have been dumped and where the laws allow those who are inclined to participate in the criminal enterprise, if you will. Those laws allow the gang members and the drug dealers to go state to state and purchase guns where the state regulations are much more loose than states like Chicago. Yes, it's hard to purchase a legal gun in Chicago because there are strong regulations, but all they have to do is go right across the border to Indiana, where there are weak regulations, and they bring those guns back to our community. So we're killing ourselves. It's called fratricide, but just as importantly, those outside of the inner city of the other complexion are killing themselves in mass numbers. So clearly on both sides, we see guns destroying the fabric of our community and of our nation. And so this is a cause that we all must mobilize ourselves, but because we see that it's killing our children. How do we mobilize? You contact. I want you all to reach out to the National Rifle Association and try and touch their hearts too. Email them. Email the U.S. Senator, the top person in the Senate. Email him and let him know that you want to make sure that guns are off the street in your community, and do that with stronger regulations. We've heard our president flip-flop. He likes to play three-card monte on us. He tells us he's going to do one thing and points out the victory, and before you know it, he has flipped that red card on us and all of us lose. So we need to make sure we are reaching out to our leadership nationally and letting them know that we want gun regulations that will get the guns out of our community and out of the hands of the mentally ill and the criminally inclined. And we email McDonald. He is the, Mitch McDonald is the head of the U.S. Senate. Email him as well, because he is a key player in these regulations.
Let me stress, today we decided to focus, on what happened on the border with Jonathan and Reverend Patterson, and the gun flow in Texas, because you could take a semi-automatic weapon outside of a ball game and shoot 100 people. They couldn't be stopped. Now, the real issue today was our children going back. JANETTE Wilson, I push that center. Give JANETTE a big hand. JANETTE. And again, what we have our children today here who we got today, JANETTE, bags, all these bags and books.
Well, we're excited about these young people have survived the storm in Chicago, and they represent children who are returning to school this school year. Yet many of these students will return to schools and there will be empty seats because of the gun violence. So many of their peers have been shot and killed, and so many of these young people, we're giving the book bags and supplies to encourage them. We're saying to parents, you need to take your child to school every day that you can. It's not an option. We want you to meet your child's teacher, because we want these young people and the teachers that are scheduled to teach them to know we have high expectations. You don't have to know what they need to know. What you have to know is the teacher has to know you expect greatness, you expect excellence, and you expect your children to exceed you in whatever. My daughter took calculus. I never did well in math, but I didn't tell her, and she would bring home math homework. I had to go talk to the math teacher. I said, I can't help her. My husband and I both could not help her, but we sat up every night. Let's watch and do your homework. Turn off the television. Turn off your cell phone. Turn off all electronic equipment. We need to work on homework. And she'd show us the paper, and we said, what did your teacher say? And then she'd tell us something the teacher said, and we'd look at it and nod. Take your child to do homework when you get home. You watch them. You don't even have to understand it all, but just say, what did your teacher say? And show me on the paper. Make them unball the paper. You got to send flat paper back to school and help them understand technology. Don't buy those games. Buy them a computer that they can use for school. They don't need those video games and stuff. While you're spending money on gym shoes, your child needs to be into the technology. That's why we're saying we're dealing with STEM. Your child needs to study with a certain kind of music. You can't study with music that gets you ramped up. You can't focus if you're bouncing. So you got to teach them some classical music. Is that right, Reverend?
Yeah, look, we want 16. So number one.
Number one.
Parents.
Parents.
Take
Take
your child to school.
your child to school.
Don't sin.
Don't sin.
Take
Take
your child to school.
even high school.
Number two,
Two.
meet
Meet
your child's teachers.
your child's teacher.
Teachers teach differently.
Teachers teach
When
differently.
parents,
When parents,
no teachers,
no teachers,
children,
and
no
children
both. Exchange
exchange
home numbers.
or cell numbers.
Turn the TV off
Turn the TV
3
off
hours a night.
3 hours a night.
Pick up your child's report card
Pick up your child's report
every 9
card.
weeks. And take your child to church,
Take your child to church,
temple,
temple,
synagogue. Once a week.
Once
Put
a
your
week.
hands together. Now, we have 1,000 book bags here today. Children stand. Babies, let the children stand.
K to 12th graders all stand. Young people, over here, stand. Students, stand. If you go to any school, stand.
We're going to
we
give
gotta
them
kick
book
that-
bags today. We're also going to send 1,000 book bags to the Bahamas as well.
Right.
We expect as soon, right now, we're not taking up any products for the Bahamas. I need you to hear from me, Michael, because we can't get the products into the Bahamas. We don't know where to send them, but they're still recovering bodies at this point, recovering bodies. So maybe in a week we'll be sending clothes and goods to the Bahamas. Right now we want those who are there to be able to come to America or come to Britain, as the case may be, right? Come to America and children to come to school. That's the first stage. We'll talk about that today. Next we'll probably be loading up airplanes. We talk with FedEx and we talk with Delta and talk with United Airlines and talk with UPS about plane loads to the Bahamas. But right now they're recovering bodies, so it's the inappropriate time for that. But that's a matter of time. We'll ask you to send money. Founder, people want to send money. Who can you send, Founder? Come right quick. To the Bahamas.
We've got two organizations that we're looking at. One of them, top of the list, Head Knowles. They do frontline, on-the-ground relief. They are at, you can contribute to them at www.onealuthra.org/donate. And for all updates and information and other verified sources where you can give money, that would be at www.bahamas.com/donate. www.bahamas.com/relief. www.onealuthra.org/donate. Thank you.
Rainbow Push will be working on getting Bahamians into America and to Britain until they can get back home and children in school. We're not taking up any money. Money gets funny. It's a Rainbow Push.
Rainbow Push,
Not taking up
not taking up
money.
money,
We're providing service.
providing service.
We intend
We'll attend,
go to the Bahamas,
go to the Bahamas,
meet with the people,
meet with the people,
give them inspiration.
give them inspiration.